She was forced to say, "I do," but what she whispered at the altar left everyone frozen. The church was draped in white roses, gold accents glinting under the soft light of the chandeliers. It was a wedding straight out of a luxury magazine, impeccably staged, perfectly timed, and attended by the most powerful names in the city. The organ music faded into silence as the priest cleared his throat, holding open the ornate book in front of him. All eyes turned to the bride, standing motionless under the heavy veil that framed her pale, trembling face. Her gown shimmered with hand-stitched pearls, yet she looked more like a ghost than a woman on the happiest day of her life. Across from her stood the groom, tall, confident, beaming with pride. He reached for her hand, but she hesitated a second too long before offering it. The priest spoke clearly, each word slicing through the silence like a blade. "Do you, Elena Martinez, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Her lips barely moved. "I do," she said, the words dry and emotionless. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped closer, her veil brushing against the groom's cheek. She leaned in, almost lovingly, and whispered something into his ear. Just a few words, but they were enough. His face turned a shade lighter. He blinked. And then he froze. Gasps echoed through the church. Fade to black. But let's rewind to how we got here. Elena Martinez was 27 years old, but sometimes she felt like she had lived 3 lifetimes, none of them truly hers. Born into one of the wealthiest and most traditional Latin American families in the country, she had spent her entire life inside a gilded cage. Her father, Rafael Martinez, built his empire from the ground up, or so he loved to remind anyone within earshot. A towering man with a booming voice and eyes that could silence a room, Rafael demanded perfection from everything and everyone, especially his only daughter. Image was everything to him. How things looked mattered far more than how they felt. Elena, on the other hand, had always lived with her head in the clouds. From the moment she could read, she buried herself in novels. Stories were her escape. While other little girls dreamed of weddings and tiaras, she imagined distant cities, published books, and letters written under candlelight. Her room was filled with journals no one was allowed to read. She dreamed not of pearls and ballrooms, but of paperbacks with her name on the cover. But her dreams were never meant to flourish in a house like hers. Her life had been meticulously planned, elite schooling, rigid etiquette training, constant reminders to smile properly, sit like a lady, and marry well. Love was not a factor. Love, according to Raphael, was for peasants and poets. Still, love had found her. In her second year of university, she met Luca, gentle, passionate, wickedly smart. He didn't wear tailored suits or drive luxury cars, but he made her laugh in a way that felt like freedom. They hid their relationship for nearly 3 years, sneaking weekend trips, trading poetry over text, and making promises beneath the stars. But secrets don't last long in a family like the Martinezes. When Raphael found out, he was livid. "A man who works part-time and dreams full-time is not a future," he thundered. Elena was given a cruel choice: leave Luca behind, or watch as her father used his influence to ruin him completely. And so, a heart that once dreamed of writing stories was suddenly trapped in someone else's. The engagement came wrapped in gold, literally. Elena returned home from a short trip to find a private dinner arranged in the family estate's grand dining hall. Crystal glasses, vintage wine, and a velvet box at the center of the table. Seated beside her father was Sebastian del Toro, the polished and impeccably groomed heir to the Del Toro shipping empire and the son of Raphael's oldest business partner. Elena recognized him vaguely from charity galas and high society events. He was the type who smiled for photographers and winked at waitresses when no one was looking. The moment Raphael placed his hand on Elena's shoulder and said, "Congratulations are in order," something inside her froze. Sebastian stood, opened the box, and revealed a ring the size of a small planet. Cameras flashed. Yes, cameras. Raphael had invited the press. From that day on, Elena's life no longer belonged to her. Sebastian was perfection in public. Flashing smiles, making toasts, holding Elena's hand just tight enough for the cameras. But behind closed doors, he was possessive, smug, and treated her more like a trophy than a partner. He spoke in orders, not requests. He called her princess, but in the same tone one might use to scold a pet. And worst of all, he made it clear he didn't care about her past, as long as she stayed clean now. Elena pleaded with her father. "I don't love him. Please, let me go." But Raphael was unmoved. "You don't have to love him. You have to marry him." When she threatened to run, he pulled out his final weapons: money, power, and cruelty. "If you walk away, you're cut off. And I'll make sure Luca never works again. I'll destroy him." True to his word, Raphael fabricated a scandal. Photoshopped images, false accusations, whispers in the right ears. Overnight, Luca was disgraced. He left town quietly, heartbroken and ruined. Elena agreed to the engagement. Not out of duty, but sacrifice. She sold her own future to save the man she loved. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Elena's life became a carefully choreographed performance. Every hour was scheduled: bridal fittings at dawn, tastings with celebrity chefs by noon, interviews with bridal magazines by mid-afternoon, and staged photo ops with Sebastian by evening. Makeup artists became her shadow, stylists her second skin. Her smile, once genuine, was now just another accessory. Sebastian relished the spotlight. He loved the attention, the way people looked at them like they were a fairy tale come to life. But in private, the fantasy crumbled. He dictated everything: what she wore, who she spoke to, what she posted online. "Image is everything," he reminded her daily. "You're not just marrying me. You're representing our families. So don't embarrass me." He would grip her wrist just a little too tightly during photos. Whisper things through his teeth with a polished smile. Praise her in front of others and criticize her ruthlessly when no one else was around. Her apartment, once a peaceful haven, had become an extension of his control. Bodyguards, assistants, surveillance. Elena felt like a prisoner wrapped in silk. Her mother, Camila, remained mostly silent. She had survived her own quiet war with Raphael long ago and bore the battle scars in her eyes. But in rare, stolen moments, she'd gently brush Elena's hair behind her ear and whisper, "You still have choices, mi Nina." It was on the night of the rehearsal dinner, hours before her final dress fitting, that Elena found a small, unmarked envelope on her pillow. No postage. No name. Just her. Inside was a handwritten note in familiar ink. "I know you're not okay. You don't have to do this." Her breath caught. She clutched the letter to her chest, her heart pounding harder than it had in months. For the first time in a long time, Elena felt something stir inside her. Not fear, not resignation, but resistance. A crack in the glass cage. That night she didn't cry. She planned. The morning of the wedding dawned with a golden sky and a soft breeze. Perfect weather for a ceremony scripted down to the second. Elena awoke not to birdsong or peace, but to the hum of a dozen staff members flitting through her suite. Makeup artists arranged their tools like surgeons. Florists bustled in and out with fresh bouquets. Her custom designer gown hung on a dress form like a warning. She moved through the motions silently, obediently, a porcelain doll in motion. Smiles, nods, half-hearted answers. The people around her mistook her stillness for surrender. But inside, Elena was awake, sharper than ever. Her eyes caught every glance, every whisper, every timing cue. As her makeup was applied, she used the mirror to discreetly watch the door. When the hairstylist stepped out, she reached for her phone under the table and made 3 brief calls. No names, no details, just soft-spoken confirmations. "Yes, today." "The second reading." "I'll be ready." Then, as the final touches were being fussed over, she slipped a small envelope beneath a jewelry box on her vanity, addressed to Mama. The note was short, but heavy with meaning. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. Something was coming. Just not the wedding anyone expected. The cathedral gleamed like a cathedral from a dream: gilded columns, vaulted ceilings, flower arrangements so opulent they looked like museum pieces. Hundreds of guests filled the pews, murmuring behind hands and diamonds. Paparazzi lenses peeked through the edges of stained glass windows. It was a wedding not of hearts, but of empires. At the far end of the aisle, Elena appeared. Her gown, ivory silk with a train like a river of pearls, drew gasps from the crowd. She moved slowly, deliberately, each step echoing through the stone chamber. Her expression was unreadable, neither joyful nor afraid, just still. The calm before something. On the other side of the altar, Sebastian stood tall and gleaming in a tailored tuxedo, smirking like a man who had already won. He glanced toward his father, who gave a small nod of approval, and then to Raphael, who beamed as if securing a merger. The priest began his ceremony, reading from a time-worn script, blessings, obligations, promises. Elena barely heard it. The voices around her were distant, muted beneath the rushing pulse in her ears. "Do you, Elena Martinez, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The pause. Then, calmly, quietly, Elena said, "I do." But it sounded like a verdict. A curtain drop. The final line in a performance she never auditioned for. She turned toward Sebastian. Smiled, not sweetly, but like someone about to win a game no one knew she was playing. She stepped closer, slowly, until only inches separated them. Then she leaned in, lips brushing just beside his ear, and whispered something no one else could hear. Whatever she said, it shattered him. Sebastian's face drained of color. His hands dropped to his sides. His lips parted but no words came out. The priest hesitated. The room fell deathly silent. And then, a collective, breathless pause. The bride stood still, staring ahead. Waiting. That morning, just before the makeup artist arrived, Elena slipped out onto the balcony of her bridal suite with a silk robe cinched tight at her waist and her heart hammering like a war drum. Waiting at the edge of the garden courtyard below was a man in a crisp gray jacket, camera bag slung over one shoulder. He wasn't on the guest list. He wasn't meant to be. His name was Marco Reyes, an investigative journalist Elena had contacted under a pseudonym weeks earlier. He specialized in exposing corruption in powerful families. And Elena had come to him with gold. She handed him a sealed manila envelope. Inside, a damning dossier. Documents, shipping manifests, falsified invoices, and most importantly, emails and voice memos tying Sebastian to a logistics shell company used as a front for human trafficking. Young girls, immigrants, exploited and moved under the guise of medical aid. Elena had uncovered it after noticing strange discrepancies in his travel records and asking too many questions. Sebastian slipped up, and she followed the breadcrumbs. "I can't go public," she told Marco. "Not yet. Not until I say the words." "What words?" he asked. Elena stared out at the sunrise. "When I say, I do, release everything. We could all let them see who he is." He nodded. "It'll be done." And so, back at the altar, as the echoes of her mechanical "I do" faded into the grand cathedral, Elena leaned in and delivered her dagger. "By now, everyone in this room knows what kind of monster you really are." Sebastian's face crumbled. His hands trembled. All around them, phones buzzed. Notifications dinged. Guests checked their screens with widening eyes and horrified gasps. The carefully constructed empire was cracking. Live, in real time. Elena stepped back. And for the first time in years, she smiled. The sound came like a rising tide, soft at first, then unmistakable. Phones buzzing. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. A notification here. A screen lit there. In the space of seconds, the entire ceremony shifted. Murmurs, then gasps. Eyebrows furrowed. Guests turned to one another, confusion spreading like a virus. Someone held up their phone and whispered, "Oh my God." A prominent senator in the front row showed his screen to his wife. Breaking, Del Toro Logistics tied to international trafficking ring, evidence leaked minutes ago. Another guest, a CEO from Spain, paled as he read the headline out loud. The whispers became ripples. The ripples became waves. A socialite dropped her phone in shock. A priest's assistant stumbled backward, eyes wide. Sebastian turned in place, scanning the crowd, his face collapsing into dread. His hands trembled, his confidence evaporating. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. The gleam in his eyes turned desperate. He looked to his father, who had gone stiff and cold. No rescue was coming. Then Sebastian did the only thing he could think of. He ran. Down the aisle. Past the altar. Cameras flashed like lightning in a thunderstorm. Someone screamed. A groomsman tried to follow but stopped, unsure of what side he stood on anymore. The priest remained frozen, script in hand, mouth half open. Elena stood alone. She turned slowly, eyes sweeping across the cathedral. Every face turned to her, searching for answers. With steady fingers, she lifted her veil and let it fall to the marble floor. Her voice rang clear through the chaos. This wasn't a wedding, it was a reckoning. For a beat, there was silence. Then applause erupted, scattered at first, then swelling. Some guests stormed out in shame. Others stayed, stunned. The empire had fallen. And Elena had lit the match. In the days that followed, the shockwaves from the wedding scandal rippled far beyond the cathedral walls. Rafael Martinez, Elena's father, scrambled to control the damage, issuing public statements filled with denial and deflection. But the cracks in his polished empire were too deep. His business partners distanced themselves. Investors pulled out. The media swarmed his headquarters like vultures. Within a week, both Sebastian and Rafael were arrested amid ongoing investigations. Charges of conspiracy, money laundering, and human trafficking hung heavily in the air. The empire they'd built on lies was crumbling. Meanwhile, Elena's story captured hearts worldwide. Her quiet courage and razor-sharp mind made her a beacon for anyone trapped by expectations they never chose. Anonymous blog posts of her journal entries, leaked by a close friend, went viral. Readers resonated with her raw honesty and resilience. Publishers reached out, eager to help her transform her pain and strength into books that could inspire others. At last, Elena could finally embrace her lifelong dream of becoming a writer. And then, in a twist she never expected, Luca reappeared. No longer the boy from her past, but a man who respected her strength and her journey. Their reunion was cautious but hopeful, this time on her terms, free from fear and control. Elena had reclaimed her life, and with it, her future. Sometimes, Elena's voice softly begins over a montage of images. The loudest thing you can do is whisper the truth. The scene shifts to Elena standing confidently on stage at a women's leadership conference, her words igniting hope and courage in the crowd. Next, she's seen hunched over a desk, pen in hand, pouring her soul into the pages of a memoir. Later, Elena laughs with a group of young girls, guiding and inspiring them to find their own voices. The camera follows her walking past the old cathedral where the wedding took place. Now closed, its grandeur faded, a relic of a past she's left behind. Finally, Elena turns, looks straight into the camera, her eyes bright and steady. With a gentle smile, she leans in and whispers once more, her voice filled with quiet power. Speak your truth. Always.